Hey, welcome back to Conscious Recovery. My name is Matthew, and this is a video series where I share everything I've learned about addiction in the past 10 years of my sobriety, everything I learned in university, going back to get a degree in psychology, and everything I learned through my personal exploration to find the answers I needed to beat addiction. Not just addiction itself, but the very question of why did I become addicted in the first place? Why is it that I needed to seek comfort in substances? There was something missing in my life. There was something missing within me. So I needed to find out what that was. And I have. And now I want to share everything I learned with you guys, just in the hopes that it might help somebody else out there who's struggling. So we are talking lately about emotions. My last few videos have been on dealing with different emotions that are connected with childhood trauma. Childhood trauma changes us in a few ways. One of the ways that it changes us is it enhances our emotional experience. Our emotions are amplified, for better or for worse. And with emotional reactivity really, really high, we find things like anger and rejection and loneliness and isolation. All these things are very, very powerful in our lives. All at the same time, our intellectual ability to understand and balance those emotions is really low, because we've done damage with our brain. Addiction doesn't let us practice a lot of higher thinking to achieve balance. So we have really high emotions and a really low ability to understand and manage those emotions. So what do we need to do? We need to recognize and respond. We recognize the problem that our emotional experiences are too high and our understanding is too low. And so we got to work to understand our emotions better, and then we'll be able to bring them down and achieve some balance. All right, because your emotions just on their own are not an accurate guide for you right now. They're not a good compass for you to follow, okay? So we need to learn about them. I've talked about anger, I've talked about rejection. There's a few more I want to talk about. Now, the one I'm doing today, I don't know if it's technically an emotion. It's definitely a feeling, but it's a little more complicated than that. I'm talking about hopelessness, all right? The idea of being hopeless, having no plans for the future, no belief that the future will get better. And so how do we deal with something complex like that? Because feeling hopeless, it's not just a feeling. Like anger is a very identifiable feeling. Fear is a very easily identifiable feeling. Joy, right? Sadness. But how do we tell when we're hopeless? Especially if you spent a lot of time using drugs and alcohol to mute your emotions. And so your emotions are not as recognizable. What does hopelessness feel like for you? Do you recognize it when it comes up? Because I didn't for a long time. In fact, hopelessness, it wasn't really a feeling that I could identify in my body, and actually still can't today. I don't know where that lives inside of me. Like I can't feel it in my heart or my lungs or my stomach or, the back of my head like other emotions. But what I learned through the course of my work, understanding these things, is that I could identify hopelessness a couple of different ways. One way to identify hopelessness is to just ask yourself, do you have any plans for the future? Okay, and I didn't. It's no secret that during my addiction, I've mentioned it before, there's many times when I thought about ending things for myself because I just didn't see a way that things could get better. That's when hopelessness really is dangerous. If you don't have any plans for the future, if you're not working on something to make tomorrow better than yesterday, that might be a sign that hope is a problem for you. You don't have enough of it. And then that might be a reason to start thinking about it, about building hope. Okay, and there's one other way to recognize the idea of hopelessness in your life, and that is, do you feel like you're deserving of good things? Okay. It's an easy thing to tell somebody in recovery to, exercise and eat better and maybe go back to school and try to get a better job and put up boundaries in your relationship, and these things will improve your life, right? Like the things you have to do in recovery to make things better, they're not terribly complicated, all right? But so often people won't do them. And I think that's because deep down inside there's a belief that maybe you don't feel like you're deserving of a good life. Like, why would you chase after good things for yourself if you ultimately feel like you're worthless, if you're like just nothing, right? In order to fight for a future in which you prosper and in which you're living well, you have to believe that you're worth something, and you have to fight for yourself. But if you grew up in trauma where you've been abused or neglected or dismissed and ignored, maybe you don't feel like you're worth anything. So this idea of self-worth, this idea of this aspect of your identity, knowing that you're valuable and you deserve a happy life, for some of you, that's going to be the place that you have to start. You have to start from a position of saying, I am worth something. And you tell yourself that every single day, even if you don't believe it. All right? And every day you do something to improve the situation around you. Whether it's a small thing like just cleaning up your room and making your bed, or going for a walk, or just eating an apple instead of a bag of chips, whatever it is, I don't care. You know what you need to do to make things better. And so if you're going to recognize and respond to the problems of your addiction, recognizing the fact that you don't think you're deserving of good things and choosing to respond differently by making yourself do good things, that might be one way to start. This whole thing is just about building awareness, and I talk a little bit about these ideas. I know there's a lot more to discuss, but maybe these ideas about hope and hopelessness will help you to recognize it in yourself, and then you can start to pay attention to that, and maybe you can make some progress. So hope. Do you feel deserving of it? Do you have plans to reflect the fact that you do have hope for the future? And if you don't, that's something to look at and something to rectify. All right, good luck.